You've opened up this video, you see that I'm recording the video at around 10 PM, and the answer to the question that I'm sure is on your mind is no. No, I have not had a shower yet. However, one thing I can tell you about for sure is last week we did have a UFC fight card, and it seems like there is a chance that something did happen that went a little bit out of the ordinary, and I'm going to go over everything that I kind of know right now. I'm going to give my opinion on it as well, and I'm even going to talk about why this potentially could happen again, or also potentially may have even happened again in the past. Because, of course, last weekend we did have a UFC Vegas card. Overall, the card was absolutely terrible, but there was one very standout fight regarding a little bit of line movement in the Yadier del Valle versus Isaac Dulgarian fight. Now, I'm not going to go into what happened in the fight in too much detail, but what did happen was prior to the fight, in the matchup, there was a very significant level of line movement on the Yadier del Valle side, who was a relatively considerable underdog, around plus 160, plus 200, I think he even got to at one point. It really bit him down to nearly even odds. So that means that lots and lots of money in the last 2 hours before the fight started to take place went on Yadier del Valle. And what happens? Yadier del Valle went out there and he won the fight. Not only did he win the fight in the first round, and it's another prop that allegedly people were putting a lot of money on. The prop value for Yadier del Valle in round 1 went from like plus 850 to plus 500 or something like that. So, as usual, sports books look at this and think this is a little bit sketchy. They contact the FBI, who has apparently contacted the UFC, and it does kind of seem like there is going to be a little bit more of an investigation happening. Now, I will say this information is coming from someone called Harry Mack, and I will admit I am not too familiar with Harry Mack as a reporter, but I am going to go with this because it does look like some things definitely do have some validity to it, given the fact that sportsbooks are going to actually be refunding. So there is some validity to what I am about to say, potentially, given the fact that Caesar Sportsbook, I think even like William Hill did refunds. I think DraftKings is investigating it. So what has allegedly happened, of course, was we know that money went on Del Valle before the fight happened, but apparently the UFC knew about it and gave them hours to remove the fight, and the UFC didn't. So potentially the UFC even knew themselves that Yadier del Valle was going to be taking on an injured Isaac Dulgarian and let the fight kind of continue on. I'm not too sure if this part is really true. But what we do know about now is apparently the FBI is now going to be investigating fights, and they have flagged over 100 UFC fights in this year for abnormal betting patterns. However, I do think that a lot of these probably aren't necessarily true, and I even think someone here even said that there is the amount of fights seems boosted for clicks. And I think that you can look at this kind of like the NBA situation, where the NBA come out and said they're going to be looking at like 400 games for potential weird betting, and they come out with like 2. So even though they might be looking at 100 fights, there's probably a chance that they're only going to come up with like 1, 2, maybe 3 fights that have looked a little bit sketchy. However, they're looking into potentially Jason Herzog's fight, and I will say there definitely is some potential that maybe Jason Herzog has been up to no good. I'm not going to make any claims because I've never really seen Jason Herzog do anything too egregious that I can think of just on the top of my head. However, I will say a example that a lot of people are looking at is Henry Cejudo. I actually can't remember exactly what fight this was, but I think it was the Henry Cejudo versus Song Yadong fight, if I'm not mistaken. Did that fight even happen, or am I making stuff up? Anyway, there is a fight which Henry Cejudo fought in, and he told Jason Herzog after an eye poke, "I cannot fight. I cannot continue." And Jason Herzog kind of coerced him into continuing, and then, of course, Henry Cejudo went on to then lose that fight. So, that was a little bit of a sketchy situation. Harry Max even said that apparently Almeida fought with a broken hand just 2 weeks ago, and the line swung before then. So that's interesting. I didn't like it because of this. These comments. I just kind of thought that was like interesting information that I didn't even know about, because I picked Almeida to win that fight as well, by the way. And then another thing as well that Harry Mack has said, and I think that this is true, and I'm about to come up with something that I have been told, and I think I have told other people about this before, that I am aware of something, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. But before that, I'm going to say that Harry Mack, his opinion, and this is opinion as well that I also share, is that it is an institutional problem. You pay someone $10,000 to fight, and eventually he's going to find out that he can get more money doing something a little bit sketchy. And that is true, because if you really think about it, right? Like, I will be honest, I'm not too sure what a good salary is in the United States, but I'm going to guess it's probably like around maybe like six figures a year. It's like a very respectable amount of money to earn, maybe even like 60,000 US dollars a year. It's a very respectable amount of money to earn. So you get into the UFC, you're making a 12 for 12 and you get no bonuses. You win 3 fights on your 12 for 12. You're earning for 3 fights as a celebrity as well, should I add, about 75,000 US dollars. And that, when you look at something like boxing, when you look at something like NBA, which I know are completely different, is not a lot of money considering the UFC is so big as a multi-billion-dollar company that has a platform, that has the budget as well. We know that they've got the budget, that have signed a multi-billion-dollar TV deal alone, let alone all the sponsorships they have on the arena and the shorts and stuff like that too. So when you are going to be fighting and all of a sudden you're making this $10,000 to fight, or $10,000, $20,000 to win, give or take, and someone comes up to you and they say, hey, I'm going to pay you potentially 6 figures to throw this fight, it's definitely not a situation that I think a lot of people would turn down, because you even look at the NBA, like Jonte Porter recently is going through a lot right now. I think he was paid like $500,000 to throw, but he made like $500,000 a year fighting, playing for the NBA, and then just that extra bit on the side was enough to tip him over. Like Chauncey Billups as well is being investigated right now for potentially telling people about who he's going to be rostering on his team. He would have been making millions of dollars a year. He made millions of dollars a year in his career as well. So when you can kind of take someone that's quite vulnerable, in my personal opinion, this isn't even really an opinion, this is a fact. Isaac Dulgarian was living in a trailer with his family. I do believe he has a wife, or he has a girlfriend and his child. And he was living in the car park of the Factory X MMA gym. Now, I know that since the Krause situation, he did move, but he did train under James Krause. He was living in a caravan, in a car park, you know? Like, for Isaac Dulgarian, this is a guy that just didn't really have, like, a great living situation, I guess you could say. He didn't have, like, a secure roof over his head. So maybe someone like him, and this is probably why he is getting targeted in this investigation right now, probably could be vulnerable for a situation along those lines. And I can tell you as well, I can tell you as well that I am aware of another situation as well. There is a fighter that is actually still currently on the roster, and when he was on his 12 for 12 contract, he also potentially may have lost intentionally and put his show money on his opponent to win the fight, and used that money then that he won, potentially, to move to a better gym. Now, this is something that I was told. This is not something that I am saying is true, but potentially these things have happened before, and potentially I have been aware of these things happening before as well. So it's not just something that like people are making up. So there is definitely a chance that there is going to be some sort of investigation. Maybe absolutely nothing comes out of it. Maybe just maybe they're just going to look at this fight, because this fight definitely was a little bit suspicious, but it will be quite interesting to see if the FBI does actually investigate the UFC like the FBI has been investigating the NBA. Release the Epstein files.